I think this is a tricky question because, yes, I believe that everybody does have their own intersectionalities, but I don't think that all intersectionalities are equal. I definitely have my own intersectionalities, but I also believe that I intersect at white and male, which does not equal other people's intersectionalities. I certainly didn't come from an enlightened place. I grew up in a very white suburb with very few people of color. I grew up in a very traditional Midwestern suburb who embraced traditional gender roles. I don't think I grew up in a place that saw gender fluidity or sexual fluidity, embrace those openly. So I've had to learn and overcome a lot of this. So some of this has been me having to encounter and engage these things personally and be confronted and engaged and corrected. I guess if I had to respond directly to that, it's with a question. It's how do we open the doors to vulnerability? How do we open ourselves up to the other person to say, I'm very affected by what I just heard you say or do. It made me feel this way or think this way. And I really need to challenge you on what you've said or done. I believe that you've made a generalization about me, or you've made a generalization about somebody that may not be true. Because just because their skin is a particular color, or just because their eyes are a particular color, or just because they speak a particular way, doesn't mean that that defines everything about them. If you notice, it's not the fact that I challenged, it's how I challenged. It's that I made it come from me in a personal place. As I said, I've noticed these things. I had a feeling about this. I thought about this. And I took the frame of that, I took the reference of that, and I put it on myself. And that's a vulnerable move. I also acknowledge that it's easier for me to do that. I am a large guy. I am in a position of power typically, societally as a white male, in my workplace because I'm an administrator, so it's very easy for me to shift focus onto me and feel safe. But I still feel vulnerable when I do those things, particularly when I do that around my friends or my acquaintances who are tend to come from underrepresented classes or underrepresented races or underrepresented sexual identities or genders. I don't want to speak for other people, so I'm always kind of walking a fine line between overspeaking and underspeaking. So, but we have to be open to our own vulnerability to embrace that and take it on. I am really fortunate to have friends who I will say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing and I will be corrected. And that has taught me a great deal about how to go about correcting others. That's the wrong term. Intervening or reminding people of their perspectives and preferences. One of the situations I talk about often when I used to be on what is now the production staff, it used to be called setup, is that we had two international students who were working on staff. And international students, I don't know if it's that way anymore, to be honest with you, but it used to be that they could only work half days. And these two both went to school in the afternoons, so they both worked every single morning. And one of them was Israeli and one was Palestinian, right? And that's all they saw in each other for the longest time, and didn't get along well. But as they worked together, and as us as a team of supervisors had to really sit down and talk about how do we work with Jorg and with Ariel together as part of our team to embrace them and our commonalities, right? So they start seeing each other as something other than just for their national and religious affiliations. to the day that they finished working with us, they never stopped arguing. But the day that they left the staff, they were great friends. And they acknowledged that openly and that they were going to miss each other. So part of this is, of that being vulnerable, is understanding there are differences some people will never ever get over. That doesn't have to be a barrier. Right? And that's all of that intersectionality we're talking about, is that there are parts of ourselves we will process through and get beyond. There are parts of ourselves that we will process through and not get beyond. There are parts of ourselves we're not willing to process through. We have to find acceptance in all of that. It's very complex. But openness and vulnerability is really the core of all of that.